On today's Transport Evolved, BMW scores big, Tesla's car is strictly equal to, and Toyota pulls a very strange publicity stunt. These stories and more coming up next on Transport Evolved. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 208 of Transport Evolved, recorded very early on Friday, July the 18th, 2014. I say that because somebody somewhere will have a go at me and say, but you were recording this not at 8 p.m. in the evening, you were recording it during the day, and they'll be angry and upset, and for that I apologise. But we're recording it early today for two very simple facts. First of all, it's really hot here in the south of England, and I've got my studio door open and there's a lovely breeze coming in, which I couldn't do if I was recording late in the evening. And secondly, it's the end of the school days, the end of school term, school's out for summer, and children will be arriving home early. So I'm preempting that early arrival by recording the show really early. And we've got two European guests on, so we don't need to be around for all you Americans today. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. Joining me in the studio today, virtually, of course, the wonderful Mr. Marc Kudling, all the way from Lubeck. How are things in Lubeck today?
Yes, they're very good.
Is it warm? Is it warm for you?
Yes, it's too warm actually. It's 27 degrees.
27 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
So that's 80 degrees Fahrenheit, thereabouts. And that's about the same temperature as is here. We're having, essentially, that polar vortex thing coming along and misplaying. The jet stream's all screwed up and we're getting very, very hot weather in the UK. I know you normally get it fairly warm in the summer in Germany, don't you, Marc?
It depends, I think where I'm at in Lübeck, it's pretty not far north, so there's a lot of wind and seaside weather, so it's okay.
Well, someone who doesn't get it warm is Jonathan Porterfield, who sells electric cars for a living and other eco cars. And you are in the Isles of Orkney, Jonathan.
Hi.
Last time we spoke, you were in Leicestershire, and you've now moved up north to Orkney, and it was just after I visited Orkney for the summer. Now, you've turned Orkney electric, haven't you?
Well, that's my aim, yes. There's already a huge impetus, but we now think, the last count, we have a grand total of 30 EVs on Orkney.
Now, for those who don't know, Orkney is not very big. It's not like England. It's ditchy. Can you think of somewhere else where you could kind of compare Orkney's land mass? Because there's multiple different islands, isn't there?
Yeah. Probably the size of Leicestershire, where I'm from, actually.
Right.
Probably not too different. It's not a very good gauge, I know. But
No.
It is a tiny island.
And I'm wondering if it's about the same size as Liechtenstein, actually. I bet it is.
Could be.
I bet it's about the same size. I might be wrong. Certainly smaller than the Greater London area, let's put it like that. And you're on the main island, aren't you?
Yes, a place called Finstown. Actually, would you like to know the temperature here today?
Go on.
Can you see that?
14 degrees Celsius. This is exactly where it needs to be.
Gorgeous. It's just fantastic.
That's lovely. I went on holiday to Orkney last year, and that's why I went, because of the cold. Absolutely blinking beautiful. Very beautiful. And they've also got a very lovely place called Skara Brae, which is one of the very, very first settlements ever in Northern Europe, and or certainly in the British Islands. And it's like 3,000 years BC, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah.
And fantastic Neolithic settlement. And the really interesting thing is all the buildings are the same size. All the huts are the same size. It was very, very, very egalitarian. And it seems like we've gone backwards, maybe, in society since then. I don't know. Anyway, let's get on with the news for this week. There's lots of news in the world of EVs and autonomous driving and everything else. If you see me occasionally looking down and pressing buttons, it's because I'm doing this all on my own, driving the studio on my own, but it's also because I'm coming off the end of a cold, which I had last week. So occasionally you'll see me a bit distracted while I reach for the button so I can have a good hack. But also because I'm trying to do the timing, which is something Marc used to do, but I now have to do myself. So please bear with me. But we've got a breaking news story, which we're going to do at the top of the story here. It's the August's BC to BC rally, which was due to take place this summer from British Columbia in Canada all the way to Baja California. Big EV rally. It was going to be its third year. But late last night on Facebook, the organiser, Tony Williams, made an announcement, said, essentially, we're cancelling the event. Now, according to Green Car Reports, who have given us exclusive preview to what is essentially an exclusive story, they're about to publish it. The reasons behind the cancellation were primarily ones of sponsorship. Tony saying, we don't have enough sponsorship to make the event happen, and there apparently seemed to be some other disappointments and challenges that he faced getting that event running. Now, it's a long trip, from Vancouver, BC, all the way to Baja California. Is several thousand miles. The first part of the trip from Vancouver, BC, over the border into Washington, USA, and then down to Oregon, and then down to the border with California. That's all a fairly quick sort of part of the trip because of the West Coast Electric Highway, which runs all the way from the border with Canada all the way down to the Oregonian-Californian border. But once you go over the border into Northern California, the number of charging stations, certainly for cars like the Leaf, kind of dry up, and the distance you have to, the time it takes to travel those distances get longer. I'm not sure if that was part of the challenge, and people just didn't feel that they weren't able to sponsor an event that might have this longer periods, maybe more range-inducing anxiety. Whether it's because the mainstream automakers feel they don't need to support an event like this anymore because EVs are already taking off, or whether it's some other reason. Now, Marc, you recently took part in the Wave Trophy through Switzerland and parts of Germany. It was the event that I was due to go to, and sadly I had to pull out because of essentially charging network problems getting from the UK to the start in Germany. Do you think that the kind of people are not interested in these kinds of events, or do you think it's just some other misfortune?
Wow. Well, how long is the trip first? I mean, can you tell me how long?
I think it was about 5 days. It was quite a quick trip.
Yeah, but so it's about 1,500 kilometers. Or
I think it was actually a bit longer than that. It was. I'm just trying to look up the route now. I'm gonna go on Google Maps and I'm gonna make sure I actually calculate the route correctly. But I think it's nearer to 2,000 miles.
Okay, but I think we had some. We have some rallies in Europe which are not that long. I mean, I think the Wave Trophy is definitely one of the longer ones. But there are some like 3 to 5 days rallies as well, and I think I know at least 2 that have been cancelled. So because of the same problems, I guess it's a mixture of. I think there are now more potential participants, because there are more cars.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the value for potential sponsors, let's say the sponsors that could have some positive, range to that, they are changing. They used to be maybe big companies, that want to have their green image somehow public, and now I guess it's more like going into the direction of maybe tourism and like local companies, local players. So
right.
With the Wave, we have like 2 or 3 stations a day, and at every station there's like a local player, like a utility or like a tourism bureau, or some kind of business doing green stuff, is having their own event on that day in that city. And the Wave is just one of the visitors, if you want. It's one of the enablers of this event. So that's why I guess it works, because Wave is actually like 5 times 3, like 15 events in a week. So it's not just one rally.
And it takes a lot out of the people who are taking part as well, doesn't it? I mean, it's not an easy trip, is it? Really?
Yeah, it depends on the car and how well how serious how serious you are about winning it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there are some trophies, like every day there's like a little competition, and if you really try hard and you do your block ride, for example, which is like working 2 or 3 hours at night in a hotel where the Wi-Fi is full of people and you can't really use it, stuff like that, or you're sleeping in some kind of school. There's no power, whatever. No, there's power, but there are some things to come over. And
I think there's also, isn't there, Jonathan? There is the concern that events like this can be seen. And I know it's something that Chelsea Sexton said multiple times. Is they're kind of essentially highlighting the one thing that EVs are not good at, which is long distance trips.
Yeah, I agree. The general consensus of people that have got no idea about EVs is they think they run out after a couple of miles. So as good as it is to report actual facts, it still holds in people's minds that you can't drive terrific distances, which I always counteract by saying, well, with a bit of planning, you can drive the length and breadth of the UK with planning and between ourselves with your fingers crossed. Until the infrastructure and the range increases, I still question these big, highly publicised EV rally trip type things.
And I've got to admit, I made a mistake. I thought that I could make this trip to Wave. It's got nothing to do with the guys doing the Wave. They were very well organised. I got all the information that I thought I needed. I got all the cards I needed. In the end, I was let down by the physical charging stations. Nothing else. So the reasons for my cancellation of my trip, my participation in one of these events, was down to just kind of the practical reasons of, the realization that what happens if I get to the end of this, and I spend 3 days battling charging stations, having no sleep, getting to the start, and actually being so exhausted that I couldn't cover it as a professional. And that was kind of at the end of the day, I just went, look, if I arrive and I'm exhausted, I'm going to be unprofessional in my coverage of this. And the only way I can do this properly is to cover it from a distance, which is what we ended up doing. I think in this case, I think there is the sponsorship, obviously, is the reason that's cited here, is I think people are just going, well, we don't need to have an event like this because EVs are taking off in the areas that this rally was passing through. Look, it was passing through the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregon, really, really big on EVs. Washington State, really big on EVs. Hundreds of them, thousands of them, really positive working electric infrastructure there. People drive, hundreds of miles on EVs on a regular basis in those 2 states, and they don't have a problem. California, okay, Northern California and kind of Central California, maybe not. But if you're in the Bay Area, again, huge numbers of EVs, huge EV support, total infrastructure, great salespeople. They don't need an event like this to promote EVs because EVs are doing a pretty good job on their own promoting themselves. That's not to say that we don't need to continue advocacy, because advocacy is really important and we need to continue advocacy. But we don't need to advocate these long distance trips. Look how popular it is. Look how easy it is to make these trips. But I think the final thing is, and I think the thing that may have killed it, is the supercharger network.
Yeah.
Tesla's proven by driving from the east to the west coast to the east coast that everyone can do it. And so there's no longer a fascination with making that trip because it's easy. One of the things that make those trips, sorry, Jonathan, one of those things that make those trips such a draw is because there was an element of risk, right?
Yes, yeah. I think what your trip to the Wave was good in a way that it failed, and I felt for you when I was reading your reports on Twitter and Facebook and the like. If anything good came out of it, hopefully it booked the ideas up of the providers for those actual machines.
Yes, and I've heard from them already,
right,
saying how can we help?
It's nice in a way that you failed because hopefully it's pulled their socks up and they're going to do something about it to make it more viable. But it is still something I come across constantly, even here on Orkney, even though they haven't got the distances to drive. People say, well, what if I want to drive to Inverness today? What happens? So I just highlight, the A9, and it's going to get superchargers, etc., rapid chargers rather.
So, Marc, I mean, it does work, doesn't it? But it's a challenge.
Yes, and you're right. I mean, what's this? It's not something you want to show. Or, you know what? I've done so many rallies, and people, try to beat the daily record of, all electric range, and they crawl it along the highway with 60 kilometers an hour, and it's on the back it says, big letters, this is an electric car, and we are on this rally, and so it's not a good advertisement for electric car, is it?
No, and there are people in the UK who still do that. I've seen people driving down the motorway in an electric car with a little yellow light on the top flashing,
Really?
just so that they can get extra distance. It's just, no. All right, let's, before I get scared and freaked out, let's go on to the next story. All right, so it's official. Tesla's third generation car is going to be known as the strictly equal to. Now, there is some debate. This was announced this week by an exclusive interview with Auto Express. Elon Musk said, we're going to call the next generation Tesla, the third generation Tesla, the Tesla Model 3. Now, I would just like to put my hand up and say, for the past month or so, we here at Transport Evolved have been calling the Tesla Model 3 the Tesla Model 3. So obviously, Elon picked up the idea from us. It's no worry, Elon. You're good. That's fine. But all jokes aside, there is some confusion about how it's going to be written. It's not going to be written using the Arabic 3. It's going to be written using 3 bars, says Auto Express. Now, the way that Auto Express said it was, did it like 3 Roman numerals. But we've been talking this week a lot. Lots of different people are talking to me. And Brian Henderson, I've got to credit him for this, said, you know what, I think it's going to be like the math symbol for strictly equal to, which is 3 lines, one on top of the other. Because it's already a symbol used in the Tesla Motors logo. If you look at the way when Tesla has a sign, it's T and then 3 lines, SLA. So they miss out the vertical bar in the E. And I think that's what they're going to do for the Model E. I don't know what you guys think. Marc?
Oh, good question. I've got, if I just can mention that in the German language we have something else which makes it like something we need to, the Model S. Would you say it's the Tesla S, or would you say it's the Tesla Model S?
I would probably say it was, I suppose, the Tesla Model S, isn't it? It's the Model S with the Model X.
So it's the Model S, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Because in Germany, some people, they say it's the Tesla S,
right?
And then we have some confusion with the article. Is it das Model or der Model? We have we have male and female and neutral. So that's a different story. But coming back to your 3, it's good. It's a good idea. I mean, the like horizontal bars. That's actually that sounds good. Like an E, you mean?
Yeah. So like an E. So if you did maths at high school and you did the strictly equal to, it looks like that, essentially, without, obviously.
Am I correct in thinking he couldn't use Model E because Ford have got the rights for E?
Yeah, and Ford threatened Tesla with legal action, something Elon Musk has famously quoted in saying, they wanted to kill sex! So I just think it just makes sense, because then it still looks like SEX. If you have S, the Roman numeral 3, and then X, it doesn't look right, does it?
No. See, I'm a bit of a Ford fan from when I was younger, and I used to really covet a Cortina 1.6E. It was the executive. So whether they still hold on to the name rights for that particular Ford Cortina, but we're talking 1969, 1970.
They are fiercely, especially when they think that somebody else is going to get a name and do more with it than they did, then they're going to be fiercely defensive of it, and I can understand why. All right, well, let's move on to the next story then. There was a deal signed this week between BMW and Samsung SDI for more batteries for BMW to use in its electric cars. Now, unlike most of the rest of the electric auto world who don't use Samsung SDI batteries, I know Ford's used them for a research project to do with starter motor batteries, and I know that some other automakers have used small volumes of their cells. BMW is essentially their biggest automotive customer, and BMW uses Samsung SDI lithium-ion cells in its i3 and i8, and now over the next 2 years its battery consumption is going to be increased by 20 to 30%, so that by 2016 we're going to be seeing those batteries being used in BMW's X5 eDrive plug-in hybrid, which is going to be coming to market. Now, BMW's strategy for electric vehicles is very weird, isn't it, Marc? Do you have a grasp on that? Can you codify that into kind of a logical way of thinking for us? Because they've got the all-electric range, the I range, which is kind of primarily vehicles that are electric. The i3 EV, obviously all electric. The i3 EV, the i3 Rex, which is essentially all electric with a range extended gasoline engine for short trips, and then the i8, which is initially electric, but then it's got the 3-cylinder gasoline engine to kick in as well. Versus BMW, which is the other way around, right? Is that how you'd describe it?
Yes, I guess it's similar to other car makers, isn't it?
But I mean, nobody else is splitting. No one else seems to be splitting electrified drivetrains in this way. No one is kind of going, that's our electric brand and that's our regular brand.
I think if you look at Daimler, for example, and I mean, why not? I try to find a comparison to these new brands of mobility. Let's say, for example, there's the I brand, which is more than just cars. It's like it's drive now. It's these parking space sharing. It's this combination of public transport. And something similar is Movo, isn't it? Like from Daimler, it's just that they don't integrate the cars as a product. Of course, there's the smart car to go edition if you want, but it's not that the B class is part of the Movo brand. But I mean, it could become one. Why not? So I think it's more about the I brand is more than just cars, I guess, like on long term. And the hybridification, of the let's say 5 Series or 7 Series, isn't it like? I think BMW has always been very keen on the efficient dynamic line, like putting some kind of. I mean, I don't want to say that like start-stop is electrification, but at least it's getting rid of mechanical driven air conditioning and stuff like that. So it's just a consequence. It's just a logic step, isn't it? Yeah.
Jonathan, what do you make of it? Do you think the BMW X5 is going to be a car that we'll see lots of sales of?
I think BMW's got a very strong following, very strong brand following, similar to other marques like Volvo. Is a typical Volvo driver. I think some presently BMW owners will like to get into the new hybrids that they come up with. Just because it's a BMW, I don't think they'll convert any true EV advocates, to be honest.
And if you think about the i3, didn't it draw 80% of ownership? People that never. 80% of the i3 owners didn't have a BMW before.
Right.
Like this.
Right.
So
whereas the i8 is the other way around, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of the i8 drivers are people who are existing 3 Series, 5 Series drivers who wanted something a little special to sit in the garage for weekends. It's a bit of an interesting one. All right, okay. Well, I'd be interested to know if you're somebody who's tempted by the X5. It's going to have a limited range. It's going to fit in very much like the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid, which has been a phenomenal success in Europe. I mean, it surprises me how phenomenally successful it's been, but it really opens up this market segment of SUVs that are electrified, and it gives people what they really want, which is an SUV. And let's face it, most people do want an SUV because it's big and it's luxurious and it can go anywhere, but with kind of the emissions that you get from a Toyota Prius. And
I took an order for a brand new Outlander just last week from a business on Orkney, so I'm quite chuffed about that. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Wow.
Well, it's a good drive, good fun. I don't know if I'd want one necessarily. All right, let's go on with the next story then. The White House has told Tesla fans, sorry, can't help. So the ongoing battle between Tesla Motors and auto dealer associations in various states across the US, auto dealer associations taking exception to the fact that Tesla wants to sell directly to customers rather than going through licensed, franchised third-party dealerships, which is what the rest of the automotive world does. Have been going through various state legislatures and going, we don't want this to happen. And various states have been going, yeah, you know, you're right. Tesla can't sell here unless they go through a dealership. And Tesla's fans made a petition online, 138,000 plus signatures, petitioning the White House, please change the law, make it okay for Tesla to sell directly to customers and other car companies to sell directly to customers. Tesla's response was, yeah, we support electric vehicles, we support green vehicles, but no, we can't help you because this is something that's traditionally dealt with on a state-by-state level. Do we think that was the right response, Marc?
So, I mean, I don't know who came up with this at the first place. That was the car dealers, wasn't it?
Well, the car dealers originally did it because historically, you know, car makers were really running roughshod. I mean, we're talking 60 years ago. We're running roughshod over mum and pop auto dealers who maybe ordered 1 or 2 cars a month, who didn't necessarily have huge numbers of employees, who didn't have a huge turnover. And the automakers are going, you must buy this number of cars at this price, and you've got to sell it to the customers in this way. And so they were controlling the pricing. They were being very domineering over the auto dealers. So the auto dealer associations, who are essentially unions, I know they don't like being called unions and they're not really unions, but they kind of have that same interest of protecting the interests of the auto dealers themselves. They helped push through this legislation, which for the most part in most states means you cannot sell directly to a customer. You have to go through a third-party franchise dealership, which is very different to the model we have here. Over in the UK, over in Europe, we have dealerships that are owned and operated by car companies. And very often those dealerships are flagship dealerships. They're the dealerships that show the rest of the auto industry how to be a good dealership, right? That's essentially what we have here. So that's where it comes from, Marc. But now auto dealers are generally, for the most part, with a few exceptions, parts of massive multinational, multi-billion-dollar operations. I mean, some of the world's biggest auto dealers are American, and they've got chains all around the world. Penske, for example, massive auto dealer group. There are some others, and the names are escaping me now, but you know, a lot of your local, even in the UK and in Europe, a lot of your local dealerships will be owned by an American auto dealer company or a multinational company. And so they're so powerful now, they want to stop Tesla, who's trying to shake up the auto industry from you know, taking their livelihoods, as they put it, or selling an EV, whichever way you want to look at it. But do you think the White House should have stepped in, Jonathan? Do you?
I don't know enough about American politics, to be honest, but I do question whether, you know, a lot of politicians, not just in America, but throughout the world, have got oil companies, you know, whispering in their ears. And the way we buy cars is changing so dramatically. And hats off to Mr. Elon Musk. I think he's just doing a great job in upsetting the establishment by saying, look, you know, just buy from us. And such things like his warranty, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you never take a Tesla back to a Tesla garage for a service, it doesn't invalidate the warranty. He's promising to underwrite all the Model S, so it's a comparable value to a Mercedes S-Class. I mean, he's doing stuff that no established motor franchise network.
Yeah, I don't know about the warranty one, but yeah, the underwriting of the value, definitely.
Yeah, so he's upsetting, and things have got to change. How we buy everything is changing. So much stuff is online. things have got to change, basically. I take my hat off to him for trying to push it through. Now, whether the government, central government, or governments in certain areas in the state should get involved, I don't know enough about it to sort of pass comment. But I think
know it's a very sore I know it's a very sore subject. Let's put it like this. But I think the other thing to note is that Tesla, the way Tesla operates, the way Tesla deals with its customers is evolving because the company's getting bigger. And I've, had my ear to the ground now for many years. And I've started to get kind of this impression from EV owners, Tesla owners, that the way they are treated by Tesla showrooms and service centers is changing. And people who were once very, very, yay, Tesla's very different, are now going, well, actually, Tesla's becoming like everybody else. One person online at the moment is complaining about a warranty issue they've got with their Roadster. I won't say who it is, but someone who's complaining about their battery capacity on their Roadster, and Tesla's going, this is normal, and they're disagreeing. And they've certainly said, I don't want to paraphrase what they've said, but essentially, Tesla's changing. The way Tesla operates is changing, and they're not the only person to be saying that. I've heard it from multiple different people. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. All right, final story of the segment. The i38 hydrogen fuel cell has just successfully driven 435 miles on a single tank of hydrogen. It's officially rated by the EPA at just 265 miles. I think in Europe it's rated at 300 and some miles. But there was a big song and dance by Hyundai this week going, look, we've driven all this way in our fuel cell vehicle. Or two bloggers or advocates of hydrogen have driven all this way. They drove from through Sweden and Denmark. They actually ended up going further than they intended to, and on a single refill. Now, this is very much like people driving the Tesla Model S long distance, and this kind of very loops back to the starting story of this segment, which is we have this obsession with driving vehicles long distance, don't we? For no reason. And the guys made this trip, and I can only presume they used hypermiling techniques. The i35X, or sorry, iX35, for those who are listening in the States, is the same vehicle as the Tucson fuel cell vehicle. And this is more about hypermiling techniques and how to drive efficiently, I think, than it is about long distance hydrogen or electric travel. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with you, Nikki. I'm not a great fan of hydrogen. I can't see it taking off. And I know it's clean, but, and I know it's not the subject you're talking about, but the whole infrastructure, the amount of energy it takes to create it, I can't understand Hyundai and Toyota's thinking that this is the future of moving from A to B. So I take all these stats with a huge pinch of salt, because obviously they've got a vested interest in making grandiose claims.
What do you think, Marc?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like if you drive efficiently, you can do that with every vehicle. And yeah, the fuel cell vehicle has a higher energy density, so you can drive further in the first place. But talking about hydrogen being the future, I'm on Jonathan's side. I don't really know if it's really the future. On the other hand, there will be a time where we will be able to give renewable energy, or let's say electricity created from renewable energies, giving away for free because there's enough.
Right.
And in these days, I hope that the battery technology will increase and people change the way they drive. So less long distance or taking trains or whatever there is out there. Like using mobility in a more smart way instead of having to travel 500 miles in one drive in one day.
And I do come down on the side of people going, well, look, you don't need to travel that distance on one charge. You're going to have to stop for a pee break, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, what's your bladder distance? I don't want to get personal. My bladder distance is probably about, I have to say, I'm sorry, my bladder distance is probably about 90 miles.
I'm with Robert Llewellyn when he drove from Marble Arch to Edinburgh Castle. I think he had bladder anxiety, not range anxiety.
Yes.
And I think me and Robert are sort of roughly the same age, 50-something. Any more than an hour and a half, and I need a stop.
Yeah. Well,
but there's also the bladder distance. That's also the let's say discharge time. So to be honest, it's quicker to recharge a hydrogen car right nowadays than to charge an electric car. So.
Well, yes, but then if you're on a Tesla Model S, then it's still pretty quick. All right, time for our first break. And if you haven't watched the show before, we have a little break here where I just essentially talk about stuff. And if you're watching the live stream, there won't be an ad, but afterwards there should be. There isn't always. Sometimes there is an ad, and sometimes there isn't. And I still can't figure out why. But if you're watching, you'd have just seen the ad because I just pressed the button to tell me that's where you need to put the ad, Nikki. Anyway, if you're not getting an ad, please consider going to www.transportevolved.com and checking out our shop link. We've got a fantastic shop now where you can get Transport Evolved branded stuff like I'm wearing here, like what I've got on. There you go. I can't see. Let me move my microphone and then you can see it. Transport Evolved logo. And you can support Transport Evolved by buying a Transport Evolved garment or cup or mouse mat or phone cover, and then when you're at work or you're wandering the streets and someone stops and asks you about Transport Evolved, you can tell them it's a really cool show on the internet, or if you don't like it, it's a really rubbish show on the internet, don't go there. I'm all for equality. If you think we're rubbish, just tell us, we can take it, but if not, hopefully you won't buy a t-shirt to say we're rubbish, because we get a little commission and that will help us. So if you don't like us, don't buy the t-shirt. But if you do like us, buy the t-shirt and support us. We've already had about half a dozen people, I think, buy some various garments and whatnot. The shop's only been up for a week or so. So thank you. Now on with the show. Part 2. There's been rumours that Volkswagen have been working on a new SUV, crossover SUV, mid-size crossover SUV for the US market. Obviously, the SUV is still king, and it was confirmed this week in Chattanooga. Volkswagen's going to be building a new vehicle. It's going to be based on the Cross Blue concept that we saw. I think it was at the Frankfurt Motor Show, Marc, a couple of years ago. And it was a plug-in hybrid, the Concept Blue. Volkswagen said this new vehicle is going to be based on the Concept Blue. There are going to be some changes we already know about. The interior is going to be a standard 2-3-2 seating arrangement, as opposed to the 2-2-2 in the concept vehicle. They haven't talked about drivetrain yet, but I am convinced it's going to be a plug-in hybrid, because Volkswagen's been talking about being the world leader in a very short time in electrified vehicle drivetrain. Any vehicle of that size needs to be efficient today, and this comes on the back of Volvo last week saying the XC90 is going to have a plug-in hybrid variant. We've got the Mitsubishi Outlander is going to get a refresh for 2016. BMW X5, which you talked about already in the program, and of course the Tesla Model X due, the all-electric crossover SUV. It has to plug in, doesn't it, Marc?
Yes, I'm actually wondering that. I thought it was like a set feature.
Right. But I haven't seen it in any of the press releases. Certainly not in any of the English language. So if you've seen it in any of the official German stuff, I know that sometimes Volkswagen is a little bit more forthright in its German press releases than its British ones for some reason, or its English ones. But I haven't seen it specifically stated. They haven't talked about engines or drivetrains, as far as I'm aware. So
yeah, I think we wrote something that it's based on the Passat plugin, didn't we? I need to look that up.
Right. Okay.
So I didn't pay attention. But.
That would be really good confirmation if it is, which would have kind of a similar kind of range, I'm guessing, to the Golf plugin, and I've forgotten the name of it now. The GTE. The GTE. Thank you. This is kind of a new place for plug-in vehicles, isn't it? This is the mid-ground, and it seems to be the most popular place for plug-ins to be. Can we be content there? Should we be content there? What do you think?
I think it gives SUV owners a feel-good factor that they all recognise it can be big and thirsty and, not the kindest to the environment. So if there's that feel-good factor of being able to plug it in, for the short trips to the school within the London area, Chelsea tractors, then I think they'll sell with people with money. It's the way it's got to go. But it's a segment that it's nice to see it turning into more of a plug-in type drivetrain.
Yeah. And the other thing to bear in mind, and I think this is an important thing, and based on what you just said there about the Chelsea tractors, I think we're going to have to see a change in London transportation policy. At the moment, if you've got a plug-in hybrid, you can drive around London for free. For free. You don't have to pay a congestion charge. And for those who aren't in Europe, in London, basically, we are essentially the CCTV capital of the world. Some strange statistic. In fact, the whole UK, you can't travel more than about half a mile without being photographed in the countryside, let alone in the cities. In the cities, you're always in view of half a dozen cameras, and there are cameras specifically set up on all the roads in London when you drive into a certain central area, and it's defined, called the congestion charging zone. They take a photograph of your number plate. The computer system attached to that automatically checks to see if you're registered as a resident, and it will therefore bill you an appropriate amount for driving in the congestion charging zone. If you're outside of London, it will check to see if you've already paid, and if you haven't, you have until the end of the day to pay, and if you don't pay by the end of the day, it sends you a big fine. If you have an EV or an ultra-low emissions vehicle, you can register. It's a £10 fee per year, register to drive your car into the central congestion charging zone, and you don't have to pay anything. So my Leaf and my Volt are both registered. But it was very controversial because, about 8 years ago, Jonathan, it used to be hybrids.
That's right, and LPG vehicles.
Hybrids and LPGs. And then it became, you must have a plug-in vehicle. It could be plug-in hybrid or plug-in. But then they changed it to include vehicles that were A-rated for their emissions. So even non-plug-in vehicles could drive in. But the way I see this is, with plug-in hybrids and plug-in hybrid SUVs with very, very limited mileage. I mean, you can drive a Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid, which only has an EV range of 6 miles, around central London for free, even if most of the time your engine's running. And you can drive a plug-in hybrid, like the Outlander plug-in hybrid, round London all day. Completely flatten the battery, still run round town when it's producing 35 mpg and it's producing however many grams of CO2 per kilometre. Just the same as you could with an EV. And I think we're just going to see congestion go right back up if we make these SUV Chelsea tractors plug-in hybrids and etc.
A crazy system. I think it's 75 grams CO2 per kilometre and under is exempt. And the lowest emitting hybrid vehicle, not plug-in, is a Toyota Yaris, and that's 79 grams. So all the plug-in hybrids, the Outlander, the Prius, that are under 75 grams, I think the Prius is 40 something, and I think the Outlander is 42 grams per kilometre, are exempt. But you're quite right. You do question how many people are actually going to plug it in and drive through the capital, or just drive through on petrol because they just can.
Well, it's the same as the Californian carpool line problem, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah, it really is. All right, moving on. Nissan signed another sponsorship deal this week involving football. Oh, by the way, Marc, are you a football fan?
I think when it comes to the World Championship, I have to be. Yes.
It was really funny because I was driving the other week through the traffic, and there was a guy in a van with a German flag on, and I just assumed that it was somebody who'd basically become a little bit fed up with England and had just stuck a German flag on, one of those ones you can put on the window of your car, that temporary. And he just put that on because we'd obviously come out of the World Cup a long time ago. And so I rounded the window down and said, "Wie geht's?" And he started speaking German to me, and he was like really pleased that and I said, "Oh, I didn't expect you to be German." And he said, no, really, really happy. So I congratulated him. But Nissan has signed a big sponsorship deal with a number, basically a conglomeration of football clubs around the world as a sponsorship deal. And the Nissan Leaf is part of it. And a couple of months ago, when Nissan started all of these multiple football deals, I mean, it's the 5th or 6th deal that it signed now. We at the time said, does that mean that Nissan is going to start promoting the Leaf at football games? And Nissan said to us, well, we couldn't say. But now it's very much Nissan Leaf coming to football clubs at the announcement of that deal. They had a Leaf there. So, footballers' wives, girlfriends, husbands, partners, whatever, and footballers themselves driving electric cars, Marc.
Brilliant.
Do you think that's actually going to happen? I mean, we've had some footballers in the UK driving the Vauxhall Ampera, which is essentially the Chevy Volt. And we've had a few, I mean, Nissan's had that thing with Forest Green Rovers near me where all of the team and players got a Leaf to drive around. That was part of a deal with Ecotricity, who've got a big tie-in with Nissan and the electric highway. But
I could see the like the ENV 200, like being a car for like small football clubs, like for the kids and for the. That would be nice, like as a people carrier to go to the matches on the weekends. That would be full support for it.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be great. And little leagues, as you say, mini the ENV 200 minivan, little leagues, that'd be great. So, forget the Ferrari, forget the Range Rover. If you want to be green and cool, get a Leaf or an ENV 200. So well done, Nissan. I think that's clever. And it's taken over from Ford as well, because Ford used to be a UEFA Championship League sponsor, and Nissan's taken that over, and some of the other big sponsorship deals as well. So if you watch football, you're going to be seeing lots of Leafs. But does that mean we're going to have to deal with? I hate to say this, football fans have a bit of a reputation for being not very nice people in the UK. So I just got this vision of encountering these really kind of yobbish football fans at the rapid charge going, "You got a problem? Oi! I was there first! Oi!" And let's not even talk about was it the Celtic supporters in up in Scotland? They have a really bad Celtic. Sorry, yeah, Celtic. Really bad reputation. Lovely people, I'm sure. All right, let's go flying. Do you like flying, Jonathan?
I do. I love flying.
Good.
When I've flown down south, I've hopped on a plane here down to Aberdeen and then down to East Midlands Airport. So I quite like flying, yes.
But what about you, Marc? Do you like flying?
I try to avoid it.
You're very good, actually. You take the train everywhere. I'm very impressed. And actually, you prompted me once to do a train trip to a European launch event, and it was much nicer. Problem is trying to convince automakers to train me out on the Eurostar rather than fly me is proving a bit of a problem. But I always ask now, and it's down to you. It's thanks to you. Obviously, flying, very, very big carbon footprint, but electric airplanes are finally coming. And we've been seeing for the last couple of years solar planes and various other planes coming onto the market for the very first time. But now Airbus has promoted an electric, or is promoting an electric airplane called the E-Fan, two-seater. Going to come out in 2017 as a two-seater and a four-seater. All electric, can fly for about 45 minutes. No emissions, obviously. Plugs in just like your plug-in car. 10 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack. The E-Fan 2 has a total max lift-off weight of about 500 kilos. So about half a metric ton. Can cruise at about 100 miles an hour and fly for about 45 minutes. But also being developed by Airbus is something called the E-Thrust, which is a plug-in hybrid plane. Isn't this cool? It has batteries that allow the plane, and it's electric fans that actually provide the thrust. 6 electric fans. The plane takes off using the electric stored in its battery pack, but also a gas turbine, which is stored in the rear of the plane, the tail of the plane. And then at cruising speed, the fans are driven by the gas turbine, and with any excess energy going into the battery pack. And then when it descends, it essentially uses the air equivalent of regenerative braking as it descends, which is brilliant. So we've written an article about it. So go and check it out if you're interested. I think it's very, very cool. On a more
wonder if the pilot's got a B setting on the joystick.
Maybe. On a more serious note, however, and I feel that it's only right and proper to mention this in the show today. My thoughts, and I'm sure everybody else's, are going out to the families of those involved in the horrific airline incident that happened yesterday over the Ukraine-Russian border, the Malaysian Airlines flight. I know that there were multiple nationalities involved on the flight. The causes behind the incident are still being investigated. You'll note that I didn't say it was a crash. I didn't say it was a shot down. I know that there are various news reports going out in various ways. I would just say that we're thinking of the families of those who were involved and who died tragically in the incident. And on a personal note, I'd just like to ask people, if you're covering this, if you're watching this, if you're talking about it on social media, please stop and think before you tweet, retweet, or share, because I was watching this yesterday, and as a journalist, I was absolutely appalled by the amount of misinformation that was being spread just because people were clicking and linking and sharing and retweeting. And as a journalist, it's very difficult when something like that happens to get to the solid facts. And I've been watching I was watching multiple news channels at the same time, and I was blown away by the professionalism of some news agencies and the unprofessionalism of others. And in a situation like that, the truth is all that matters. And sometimes it's not about getting the story out there quickly. It's about getting the story right. And if you're watching and listening and talking, I think we all owe it to ourselves and to the families of those involved and the victims to make sure that we don't be part of that misinformation machine. And it kind of reminded me as a journalist, as a motoring journalist, I deal with non-fatal stuff most of the time. But it reminded me that, look, you checking your facts, double-checking sources, making sure that everything is perfectly correct in the best possible way. You've got the facts represented before you click that publish button. And I think we're all journalists because we all have Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter. Anyway, I've said everything I'm going to say there. Moving on. The Tesla Model S has a security flaw, claims a Chinese security firm. It's the same Chinese security firm that's arranged, or that was part of arranging, the SciScan conference that we talked about last week, which took place on Wednesday and Thursday this week, who also, coincidentally, was running a Tesla hacking competition with a prize fund of $10,000 to anybody who could hack a Tesla Model S and gain access to its software systems and control the car in some way or another. Now, that social media stream from that security company, who is a respected security company around the world, has been full of news of the hacks. They claim that they've opened the car's doors, operated the horns, all of the kind of things that you can normally do from the Tesla smartphone app. But there have been talks of more invasive hacks during this competition, and Tesla's working with, hopefully working with the people who, the white hats, the security experts who discovered these flaws, to make sure that the car is safe. But the Tesla's still safe, right, Marc?
I hope so. I mean, I didn't really. I just know what you just said, that they could do some basic stuff, and I'm pretty sure that there are like different layers in the IT. What do you call that? So I hope that there are that you're not able to do anything else than just whatever, open the roof or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's always about the motivation, I think. I mean, even if you could do something like that, what would be the time where you would like to do that to a car that's moving? I mean, why would you want to, mess with a car?
Well,
or somebody else. I mean,
why do hackers do anything? I mean, it's
they show what's possible, basically. Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, but also, I think there is a risk that somebody could maliciously get hold of the car and do malicious things to it. But it's no more different to going online and doing a banking fraud or something else. Yes, you could cause a car to crash conceivably. But you would have all of those ducks would have to be lined up in a row. Just because you can gain access to a car's system, telematics system, doesn't mean you can make it veer off the road into a bus full of nuns. So
I think there's always like a component to it where you need to be physical at the same spot or in the vicinity of the car, or where you need some kind of security key that you normally don't have if you don't know the owner or whatever. So I'm pretty sure there's no way that you could just remotely, without any connection to the driver or to some detail of the car, of this very Tesla, could do any harm.
Yeah.
And if there's a case that somebody would do it because it's somebody he knows and wants him to have an accident. Well, there are other ways to achieve that than hacking. So it's always like a criminal motivation, of course, but there's always a way to harm somebody.
Yeah.
And if you really want to do it, you don't need to hack it and spend like weeks of work to do that, or whatever money it takes to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just a bit of a news story. I don't think it's of any relevance. It's no different to someone saying, "Oh, I've got a key for a Ford Fiesta and it fits 250 other Ford Fiestas," because I don't think it's going to worry Tesla. They'll just make a few tweaks. I don't think it's anything to be worried about.
I think it will show that Tesla can be adaptable, which we already know from accidents. But I think Tesla needs to think like a software company, and I think it does. Like Apple, Apple have security flaws. Microsoft have security flaws. Even Linux has security flaws, and you just have to be prepared for those security flaws as and when they happen. All right, we're going to have another ad break. So if you're watching live, here's an ad. And if you're not watching live, if you're watching live, there won't be an ad. But if you're watching afterwards, there will be an ad. And I just screwed that up. But please support the show if you can, if you want to consider donating on a monthly basis to help us fund the show. Now, I can tell you straight off that the hosting costs for this site, for Transport Evolved, are fairly high because you have a high-end, well-built site. It's not huge. But, we are covering the basic costs now with donations. Thank you very much, everybody. We are now covering our way. But I still have to feed my family. I still have to make a living. And at the moment, not so much. And if you want to see more people working for Transport Evolved, you don't want to see me writing all the stories all the time. We need more staff, which means we need more money to hire more people to write and work and help. And we'll get bigger and bigger. And then ultimately, one day, we want to be the twit of smart cars and transport and EVs and future technology. So that's our ultimate goal. And you can help out by going to www.transportevolved.com and clicking on the donate button. You can choose one of 3 amounts to donate every month. And that will go towards helping expand the network and make it better and bigger and spread the message about future car technology, EVs, whatever floats your boat. So please do consider donating. All right, on to Nissan this week has admitted that the key to autonomous driving isn't not thinking like a human, but thinking like a human, developing computer systems that assimilate information in the same way that we do and acting on information in the same way that we do, contextually. That contextual reactionary assimilation of data is really, really tough on a software point of view. And that's the thing that Nissan's really trying to work on. And at the same time, as Nissan divulged that at an autonomous driving conference that took place in Silicon Valley this week, Carlos Ghosn in Japan was saying, we're going to change, or we're kind of fleshing out our plans for the autonomous driving future. Instead of having this fully autonomous vision by 2020, which is what Nissan originally said, it now looks as though we're going to have autonomous driving kind of trickling out. So over the next couple of years, we'll see self-parking technology coming across all of Nissan's vehicles, and then we'll see low-speed self-driving, so traffic jam assistance. So if you're stuck in traffic, the car will essentially creep forward automatically for you without you having to keep taking your foot off the brake and putting it on the gas pedal, etc., etc. And then a couple of years later, we'll start seeing automatic lane changing. So you can put your car on the motorway or the freeway or the autobahn. You set your cruise control at your desired speed, and the car wings its way through the traffic, slowing down when necessary, avoiding accidents, but making progress at your chosen speed. And then eventually, we'll then see the car being able to handle intersections. And that will be hopefully by 2018. But it still won't be fully autonomous. It will be like this autopilot scenario, which Toyota apparently favours as well. Because Toyota has said this week that fully autonomous drive cars will increase pollution because we'll all have our commute times cut, so we'll all want to live further away from our jobs. And that will just mean we'll burn more petrol or fuel or energy. What do you guys make of all of that? Marc?
So first of all, I was in Berlin last Saturday, so almost a week ago, and there was like the VW electrified tour. So I had a test drive in the e-Golf, in the recent e-Golf, in the mass production e-Golf, which was the first time for me. And they had the ACC system, which is like automatic, so it keeps the distance to the moving traffic in the city. So what you just said, like decreasing the car to the full stop when the traffic stops, and then you just push the pedal like a little bit, and the car will decelerate to the set figure again. And even when you turn, it will. I mean, it will disable because you can't turn obviously with a 100-degree angle, but so it's getting there.
And Volvo do that in their V60 plug-in hybrid as well. It's brilliant.
Yes, and I think BMW has it.
It's a high-end feature at the moment, but it's coming down.
And I mean, I just let Tesla get their hands on it. I mean, I would be thrilled to see that.
Yeah.
But coming to the when you say autonomous car could actually increase like pollution or the traffic on the streets because people would commute longer. I don't know, because maybe the energy costs, they will rise eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hopefully, I mean, at least for the petrol, for the fossil fuels.
Yeah.
When we talk about electric cars, there might be more autonomous traffic, but I mean, aren't there people right now that do like 1 to 2 hours each direction, which is like the maximum? I mean,
yeah.
Why not just stay at home and work from there if you work on the car?
Yes, and I think that's going to be the big challenge, isn't it? Whether autonomous cars means that we have a future where we all own our own cars and our cars drive us everywhere, and we still own those vehicles and we're in the cars and they become mobile offices essentially. Yeah. Or if we move to a future where, as you suggest, we work from home, we don't own the cars, but say, we worked in the same city and I said, hey, Marc, do you fancy having a meeting over lunch? And we log on to, I don't know, the next generation of city car sharing, and we say, okay, I'm here and I want to go to there to meet my friend for lunch, and there's a little button you click and it says the car will be there in 3 minutes. It drives to your house, you get in it, it drops you off, and then it goes off and does the next thing. So it's effectively almost like your Johnny cabs without Johnny. Jonathan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the scenario of pulling up outside, I don't know, the cinema or somewhere you're going for the evening, and then just pressing a button and the car tootles off and the car looks for a parking space. I could see that happening. I think it's interesting how the whole car vehicle thing has changed. I remember getting my first car. It was a Mark II Cortina, and I had to squirt the windscreen, I had to press a button on the dash. And then my next Cortina, Mark IV Cortina, it had electric window washers, and I thought they were fantastic. And then now, we're taking for granted automatic wipers, automatic headlights. So I think as time goes on, we will progressively get into more automated safety aspects. And then ultimately, 20, 30 years' time, possibly self-driving cars that will drop us off at the office or drop us at the cinema or the restaurant and go off and park themselves.
Yeah.
I think the whole way we think about transport is definitely changing. And that's been emphasised with EVs and range anxiety, and just the way we think about cars is constantly evolving. Yeah. And I just find it fascinating which way it's going.
And that's why we call our site and our show Transport Evolved. And I have such a battle. Yeah. It's quite a common battle. I've had some really nasty emails lately from people going, oh, you're going off EVs, oh, you keep talking about hydrogen, and oh, it's self-driving, oh, it's all about EVs and nothing else, you're just a shill. And actually I've had to turn around and go, no, look, I drive an EV. Yes, I'm an EV advocate. Yes, I love EVs, but I'm a motoring journalist who specialises in future car technology. And you'll notice that Transport Evolved has slowly morphed from just a plug-in enthusiast site into a proper news site with proper podcasts and shows, and we cover all future technologies. Why we covered the airplane earlier on.
Yeah, you do a great job, by the way.
Thank you. Our aim is to make the future of transportation applicable to people who don't have any knowledge of it, as well as fans. Yes, we love having fans listen and watch and take part. But, our target audience isn't the fans. It's the people who don't know about the technology, who need an introduction to it, who need to understand, who need an in-depth knowledge or understanding. for whatever reason. And so autonomous driving is very important, and I think the future is unknown, and we don't know which way it's going. We've been down this road before in the UK. Anybody who listens in the UK, all I have to say is Tomorrow's World, which is a TV show that the BBC used to do. It was lovely, very futuristic, and they used to have these segments on about this is what we're going to be doing in the future, and you can look back in the archives of Tomorrow's World. Some of the stuff they were predicting in the 1960s and 70s for today are way off base, but some of the things they covered are spot on. So the future is a strange place, and it's going to be fun there. All right, moving on, staying with Toyota. Tell us about the Green Hell, Marc. Have you driven around the Green Hell before? The Nurburgring Nordschleife.
Unfortunately not. I mean, I find it fascinating that it's actually a legal road, like a toll road. Like
it's a racetrack that you can legally drive. You just need a driving license and a road legal car.
Yeah.
And you pay, was it €13 or something?
Could be, 15.
And you drive around this. It's a racetrack. It's one of the long. It's
like a one-way autobahn.
Yeah, it's a one-way racetrack. 158 corners, nearly 13 miles in length, and it's essentially the world's longest racetrack. And you can drive around it. There's no speed limit, although there are minimum speed limits, and there also are speed limits on certain sections. And the idea is you try and drive around it as quickly as possible. Now recently, Bjorn Nyland, who is a very famous YouTuber with a Tesla Model S, he took his car around it. He didn't push it. He drove it around at a fairly sensible speed because, as he said, he wasn't insured for racing. But
wasn't the car rated after 3 minutes?
I don't know.
I think that's what I took from it. Like he enjoyed the ride, but unfortunately after 3 or 4 minutes the power was rated.
Yeah, it was restricted. But Toyota decided to take. I mean, Toyota's taken its PEV1 and PEV2 out on the track to set records, which are fully fledged single-seat race cars, prototype race cars. But this week it took a plug-in Prius out on the track. Okay, EPA approved EV only range of 6 miles. Blended petrol plus electric until the battery runs out of 11 miles. Toyota took it round the track. In Europe, it's rated at 15 miles EV range, just because of the way that EPA and NEDC tests are different. Took it round track, 20 minutes, claimed a new fuel economy record of, 683 UK miles per gallon. And we just went, I had this conversation with several people this week when I was deciding whether to run with it. Should I do this story? It's obviously just link bait. It is completely and utterly link bait. And I just went, we're going to do this. It's link bait. We know that this car didn't actually get 683 miles per gallon or whatever it was. But Toyota did it so seriously that it did kind of get a mini thumb up from me for the audacity.
I thought it was April the 1st.
Take a plug-in Prius around the Nurburgring Nordschleife and claim that we only used 5 teaspoons of fuel. Marc?
Yes, I mean, I'm pretty impressed how fast they actually went. I mean, it wasn't that slow that we went on top some of the Wave Trophy railings or that. But when I was surprised when, was this an official marketing action by Toyota?
Oh yeah, well they took a motoring journalist around.
Okay, because the journalist was quite like ooh, he wasn't very that positive about.
And he had range anxiety and he had power anxiety, and it was everything that you want it not to be about electric cars. Oh, this is slow. Yeah. Oh, this is gentle. Yes. Oh, I've got to be really gentle on the accelerator because the petrol engine will kick in, and I'm just going.
Wasn't that good?
But someone did some great. Someone did some really clever maths and figured out that if you consider the 4 kilowatt hours of battery power that the plug-in Prius used plus the fuel that they used, it got an MPGE on the EPA style test cycle of 98 MPGE.
Yeah, I like the way they try to advertise their racing technology. Basically the Prius is powered by the battery of the race car. I was like, okay, did you get it when they showed this van with this battery, this mobile charging station?
It was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was so ridiculous.
All right. Okay, next story. Fuel economy tests are notoriously inaccurate around the world. Japanese ones are very, very optimistic. European ones are a little less optimistic, and the American ones are the most accurate, but they still overly optimistic. And normally, very few people get the range out of an electric car that the EPA or the various other test agencies say, or they get the fuel economy that the official tests say. And now the EPA is considering asking automakers to actually do trackside audits of track testing, measuring the rolling resistance of the tyres and the air resistance, to make their computer models more accurate, to make their lab tests more accurate, to make their fuel economy tests more accurate. Because something that you might not know is that when you get those fuel economy stickers, whether it's in Europe or in the US, they're not actually done by the agency who tests the cars. They're done by the automakers. They then submit those test figures and the reports from the tests to the official body, whether it's the EPA or the NEDC, and they are then approved or not as official ratings. And the EPA and other test agencies only actually take a small number of those tests and go, you know what, we're going to test that to make sure it's okay. So the majority of fuel economy test ratings are produced by the automakers. And so what the EPA wants is for automakers to be a bit more transparent about how they get the test results, to make sure that they include the air temperature, air pressure and tyre resistance and all of that in their test, so that the computer models can be more accurate and there's more accountability. Good thing, guys, I think.
It is a good thing. Strangely enough, I had a guy who advertised his Leaf on my site. He was in Edinburgh. He was told, I know you've covered this before, he was told by the Nissan dealer that his Leaf would do 120 miles. It was one of the UK Leaf. So this guy had the Leaf for 6 months, and he spoke to me. He says, I'm getting 85, 90 at a push. And he'd taken it up with Nissan, and they were just playing back and ball. But because the salesman had said, it says on here it does 124 miles range, the salesman then just turned to the potential customer at the time and said, you would get 120 miles out of this, no problem, sir. And of course, he laid down his money and bought it, and then was hugely disappointed. So I think it is really important that we get accurate data for potential customers, because this chap's now sold his Nissan Leaf. He says, I liked it, but it just didn't fit in. I'm hugely frustrated. And until the range is a lot more, I'll never go back to EVs. And obviously, he's going to tell 12 of his friends. And it's just not good PR for the likes of Nissan and others to give out false figures for the range of a car, be it miles per gallon or range on a single charge.
I think the thing is, I think calling it false figures might be a bit strong, but I think you're on the right track. I think the challenge is that your average car buyer doesn't understand how these tests are derived, how these figures are derived. Why would they? Why? They don't need to understand how these test figures are derived. But if they're going to use those test figures, they need to understand how those test figures are derived. It would be like reading your kid's report from school and going, okay, Charlie got a 4C in his maths and a 6B in his English and a 3A in PE. And you go, all right, nice. What do these numbers mean? Oh, you don't need to know. Those are just the numbers. And maybe your friend's kid, Bobby, gets different figures for each of those things, but you don't know which figure's better and which one's not. You don't know the context in which the testing was taking place. Maybe it's because I have a more scientific brain than some people, but I always kind of go, oh, that's interesting. How did that figure come to be? And so I always have to go back and find out how that figure was arrived at. Where's the maths behind it? Where's the logicality behind getting from here to this figure that's stuck on the car window here, this rating? How was that actually derived?
So why can't the manufacturers just get, the last 100 buyers of our Ford Fiesta, for instance, have averaged X amount per gallon, covering so many thousand miles, and just take a huge average and then publish that?
Well, that's what sites like, I can't remember the name of it now. There are some sites on the internet, really good sites, where you can actually go on and see what the MPG average is of people who are buying particular brands of cars. And I would advise anybody who's buying a car to do that, to go on the site. If the car's been out for a couple of years, look online and see what the average fuel economy, the average range is of those cars that you're buying. If you're buying a brand new car that's never been on the market before, you need to knock off 20%. That's my average. Yeah. That's my advice. And then you're not disappointed.
So the only way at the moment, if someone's thinking about an EV, is to go on one of the EV sites and just go into a forum and say, hey guys, how much range am I going to get out of Nissan Leaf? And get a real honest answer before you make the decision to go out and buy one, because it might not suit your daily commute.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next story, a penultimate story. Smart for 2 ED. I like the Smart for 2 ED, and you do too, don't you, Marc?
Yes, I love it.
Now, I suppose a little disclaimer: the Smart for 2 ED has an optional 22 kilowatt onboard charger developed by Brusa, who's a Swiss company. Who I don't know if you're still freelancing for them.
Yes, there's several jobs I do.
So there is a little bit of a connection between Marc and the Smart for 2 ED. The first, second generation, and third generation Smart for 2 EDs were horrible. They were the prototype versions. The fourth generation is actually the first generation that you can buy, and that's now on the market, and you can buy that. But this week, Daimler unveiled the Smart for 2 ED. The Smart for 2 and the Smart for 4, the 2016 model year, which is a complete refresh of the brand, complete refresh of both cars. Obviously, the 4 hasn't been for sale in Europe for about 3-4 years now, maybe a bit longer. It's been brought back from the grave, and they've both been updated for 2016. New engines. Gone is that horrible little paddle gearbox with the Tiptronic. You'd press it and then you'd have to ask the car if you could change gear and it would respond about 5 seconds later. And they've changed the layout of the car. You've now got, it's essentially built on a platform that's jointly developed with Renault for the Twingo. Sort of your choice of engines, manual 5-speed gearbox or a dual clutch 6-speed gearbox. And all of this is great, but there's one problem. No electric version. No electric version for 2 years, says Auto Express. What's going on? Is this Daimler going, you know what, we're not going to bother? Is this because it's a joint project developed by Daimler and Renault? And Renault's going, we've not had problems with the Twizy, we've not had that many people buying the Zoe. Renault's definitely cooling on EVs, I think. Or certainly not as openly, enthusiastically pushing them.
I was expecting that because I was feeling that when at the end of May, Renault said that they don't want to bring the Twingo as an electric car anymore. I was, concerned if this would have any impact for the new Smart. And it's like history repeating for some reason somehow, because when the Smart came out the first time in Switzerland, I think it was meant to be an electric car that never came until, 10 years later. And now Smart is proving, or Daimler is proving one more time that they don't really are into electric cars, are they? I mean, and that's the same with the whole charging strategy. Like they have a great charger, and I'm not saying this because I used to work for Brusa, but also because I know the charger of the Zoe, and I have experienced it in the daily life. And then on the other hand, they're supporting the combo charging, the DC charging. So there's no clear strategy really. And then they have a B-class built from Tesla, which has neither DC charging nor 22 kilowatt as I'm informed. I don't know. So it's strange, this whole electric strategy for Daimler.
I just think it's disappointing. I think that's how I'm going to refer to it, as disappointing. And the thing is that Daimler's going to continue to sell the Smart for 2 electric drive for the next 2 years in its current form.
Maybe they're just waiting to see what happens.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's dead in the water. We're not going to see another electric Smart, and that's a real shame, because in my personal opinion, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, the Smart for 2 electric drive, the one you can currently buy, the 2012, 2013 or 2014 model year, whatever you want to call it, that car is the smart car that we should have had back in 1990-something, 96, when they first unveiled, when it was the Swatch car that was designed alongside Swatch and Daimler, and that's the car it should have been from the beginning. It's nice and low down, it's got heavy batteries in the floor, which means it was very stable, it didn't get battered around like the Smart for 2. I mean, funny thing here is the Smart for 2 2016 model year comes with something called a side wind assist. I am not joking. They've developed a technology to stop that that you'd get in a smart car when you're travelling at speed and a lorry overtakes you.
I had a Smart 4.2 on LPG and down the motorway with the Juggernaut passing me. I tell you what, I was wide awake.
It's just sad. It's just sad. Anyway, Daimler, you need to sort it out. Anyway, and finally, Tesla. You drive a Tesla. If you drive a Tesla, you are going to look after it with hopefully some degree of carefulness. But this week, a picture surfaced on the internet, on Reddit actually, of a Tesla Model S crashed into a sign at Tesla's Fremont store and delivery centre. Now, originally this went out, and Jalopnik and a couple of other sites did the story of this is a brand new car that someone's just got in and crashed. And then if you look a bit closer, you'll notice, no, it's got the Californian HOV lane sticker on. There's a lot of brake dust on the wheels. It's a used car. And then someone made up this crazy story that it was a woman who was gone out drinking with her friend, and she'd got in the car and gone to pick it up because Tesla rang up and said your car's ready to pick up, and gone to pick it up and then crashed it. Other people saying, I've heard so many rumours. I should point out at this point that none of the rumours I've actually been able to substantiate. So very much like the more serious thing I said earlier on, you have to clarify where this comes from and consider the source of the story and go, is this source trustworthy? One way or another, though, you can probably see it on the video if you're watching. I'm going to lift up the computer so you can see it. Crashed Tesla. Not good. At least, though, it's in the right place. Not going to have to worry about parts availability. Not going to have to worry about someone coming in and going, it's going to cost you. You know, no accident repair centres, no people putting filler in strange places. And unlike me and my poor Nissan Leaf a couple of years ago, no repair centres spraying the car. I hit something in the Nissan Leaf. I caught a charging post with my door, and I had to have a very nasty dent in my car repaired. Took it to one of these dent specialists. They filled it with filler and resprayed it. But the zero emissions logo, instead of taking it off, taking off the paint and putting on a new one, they just sprayed over it. They sprayed over the sticky tape that had originally stuck the thing on the door and then super glued it to the paint. And then, of course, I discovered when the paint started peeling that that's what they'd done. Not good. Anyway, I hope that you don't crash your car, your electric car, or any other car in the same way that this poor person has. And I hope that their insurance company is understanding. Let's put it like that. Thank you very much for joining us today, Marc. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, there's no actually
Electrive.
Electrive. That's the newsletter I wake up for every morning at 6.
It's a lovely newsletter. It's very, very good. Electrive.net, isn't it?
Thank you, and you're a good source.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm very happy every day. I get a little notification when you link to us. So thank you for joining us today, and do come on again, Jonathan. Where can people find out more about you and your sort of business?
eco-cars.net, based in Orkney, as you mentioned at the top of the show, but I'm also got a colleague down in Leicestershire, so we're still busy both ends of the country, supplying to order or off our website a used EV.
You'll be a global conglomeration before we know it. Thanks everyone for watching live. I know that we have had actually a surprising number of people coming on and watching. I think people are kind of we've got some very astute fans. I actually play this little game in my head thinking, who is not going to notice that we're broadcasting at a different time? And I'm always surprised. There's a handful of particularly devoted people who always watch and listen. It doesn't matter what time of day or night I record a show. They're always there listening and watching, which is cool, I think. Very cool. I think it's cool. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to spread the words about the show and everything green and future in the world of transport. That's it, folks, and don't forget to plug in. See you soon next week.
You, Nikki.
Bye.
Bye.